Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our first video in Chapter 10. Here, we're going to look at depreciation, impairments, and depletion. Okay, our learning objectives are: 1, we're going to describe depreciation concepts and methods of depreciation. 2, identify the accounting issues related to asset impairment. 3, explain the accounting procedures for depletion of natural resources. And lastly, 4, demonstrate how to report and analyze property, plant, and equipment and natural resources. So as we preview Chapter 10, we're going to look at depreciation first here, and the factors that are involved, the methods that we can use to calculate depreciation, and some other depreciation issues. Impairments are the next subtopic, and here we'll look at how we measure impairments, look at the restoration of a loss, and assets to be disposed of. Next subtopic will be depletion, and here we're going to be establishing a base for that depletion, how we allocate the costs, estimate the reserves, and then a couple of a little bit challenging subjects, including liquidating dividends. This one's a little bit of a new topic for those of you that were in the Financial Accounting 1A and 101 course. And as usual, there's some continuing controversy associated with some of these. And then finally, our presentation and decision analysis. And we'll get right into the meat of the matter here and describe depreciation concepts and the methods of depreciation. Okay, depreciation is the accounting process of allocating the cost of tangible assets to expense in a systematic and rational manner to those periods expected to benefit from the use of the asset. Now, these are tangible assets, so that means they have physical substance and you can physically touch them, as my hand indicates here. And again, another choice of words here is allocating the cost. We're not calculating actual cost here. We're allocating that cost. So it's important to keep that in mind, as you will find. Okay, allocating costs to long-lived assets. Fixed assets, we're going to use depreciation expense. If it's an intangible asset, and I think, as you would know, that's copyrights, franchises, patents, trademarks, those kinds of things, we're going to amortize that expense if that intangible has a long-lived life, but not an indefinite life. Like land, we will not amortize intangible assets if they have an indefinite life. And then natural resources, here we're going to use the term depletion expense as we use up those natural resources. Okay, factors involved in the depreciation process. There are 3 basic questions. What is the depreciable base, and what is the asset's useful life? And then finally, what method of cost allocation is best for this asset? Let's look at an example. Here, Acctg Science has a machine that costs $10,000 and has a salvage value of $1,000. How would you compute the depreciable base of Exact Sciences machine? Well, you're going to calculate the depreciable base by taking the original cost and backing out, subtracting the salvage value. That leaves a depreciable base of $9,000. That's what we will depreciate over the life of this asset. Okay, estimation of service lives. So here, the service life often differs from the physical life. Companies can retire assets for a couple of reasons. One, it just runs out of steam. The car doesn't work anymore, and it has to be disposed of. Or there can be economic factors, obsolescence. The one I remember quite well is in the old days of computers, technological changes were happening on a virtual daily basis. I even went to Las Vegas each year to make sure I was on top of all the latest and greatest computer technologies. And so, even though my machines could run probably 5 years or something like that, they became obsolete from the standpoint of running the latest and greatest hardware, et cetera, et cetera. So we had to retire those assets early. All right, physical and economic factors of service life. Here as an illustration of our physical factors: wear, tear, damage, decay, reduce service life. Maintenance is important and can sustain and extend the service life. But again, we're going to expense those maintenance items for the most part. Economic factors, and they show my little computer there, can cause the asset to become inadequate or obsolete. Changing company's demand may also cause the asset to become obsolete. Okay, we have several methods of depreciating assets in a systematic and rational method. The first one is an activity measure. This is units of production or use. The common one maybe would be machine hours, or in the case of a car, how many miles you drive. Straight line depreciation, we just take the depreciable base and divide it by the useful life, and we're done. That's what we depreciate every period. We have a new one here in decreasing charge methods. This is going to be accelerated depreciation. You did not have that in the 1A or 101 course, but here we'll look at some of the year's digit methods and how we do that, and the declining balance method, which we did have in the 1A and 101 course. And then we have special depreciation methods for group and composite methods, or even hybrid or combination methods. Okay, let's look at the activity method first, sometimes called the variable charge or units of production approach. I usually call it units of production. And that assumes that depreciation is a function of use or productivity. Very logical. An output measure such as units it produced from equipment or miles driven on a vehicle. And number 2 bullet point, an input measure such as the number of hours a machine works. Okay, let's look at an illustration. So if we look at the Gordon Dining Services data in illustration 10.2 here, Gordon Dining decides to use the activity method to compute its depreciation for the current year. If Gordon Dining uses the delivery bot for 4,000 hours in the first year, how would you compute its depreciation expense? Okay, what we would do is we would take the cost minus the salvage value. That gives you to your depreciable base. And then instead of dividing it, we will divide it by the estimated total activity here. In this case, 30,000 hours. So we take the initial cost of $500,000 here, less its salvage value of $50,000 here, divided by 30,000 hours, we get $15 per hour of depreciation. So in the first year, they used 4,000 hours given in the problem, and we multiply that times $15 per hour, we get $60,000. Okay, next method is the straight line method, the one you're probably the most familiar with from your previous courses. The straight line method considers depreciation as a function of time rather than a function of usage. The major objection to straight line method is that it rests on two assumptions. The first one is the asset's economic usefulness is the same each year. The asset may not be utilized the same each year. And number two, the maintenance and repairs expense is essentially the same each year. And as that asset gets older, it will probably have more downtime as it will need more repairs to maintain its operating ability. Okay, let's look at an illustration of straight line depreciation. If we refer to the previous information regarding Gordon Dining Services, we're going to again take our cost minus our salvage value, $500,000 minus $50,000. That's $450,000, and we'll divide it by the number of years that it's expected to be useful. In this case, 5 years. So we'll depreciate it to the tune of $90,000 per year. Very simple, and it has value from the fact that it's a simple method to employ. Okay, let's take a look at decreasing charge method here. Now here, the decreasing charge methods provide for a higher depreciation expense in the earlier years and a lower expense in latter years. Okay, what is the main function of this approach? One, the company should recognize more depreciation in the earlier years because the asset is most productive in the earlier years. And two, accelerated methods likely will provide a constant total cost because depreciation expense is lower in the latter periods at a time when the repair and maintenance costs are often higher. So you can see that it maybe balances out a little bit from that standpoint. Okay, sum of the years digit methods result in decreasing depreciation based on a decreasing fraction of the depreciable base. Each fraction uses the sum of the years as a denominator. So let's look at that. Here, we're talking about a 5-year period. So if I go down to this chart here, I got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I add those all together to get 15. Okay, so now you can see what we do. We take 5/15, 4/15, 3/15, etc., multiply it through times the depreciable base, and that gives me depreciation expense, and accumulated depreciation can be calculated. Book value will go down to the $50,000 book value. That looks like a good place for us to stop this video, and when we return, we'll look at the declining balance method. Until that time, bye for now.